Right. Welcome into another episode of Buzzbeat. This is Brian Geisinger, and today on May 27th, 2025, I'll be joined by two of my co-hosts, Darian and Matt, as we discuss two prospects in the upcoming 2025 NBA draft. Two guys that are pretty safely mocked in the top, I don't know, 7 or 8 of maybe even a little bit higher than that of the draft, which is Baylor's VJ Edgecombe and Duke's Kon Knueppel. We'll chat about their athletic profile, offensive, defensive games, and then of course touch on how they might fit within the current structure of Charlotte's roster. Before we get into that, Matt, welcome back. How are you doing? I'm excited to talk some draft with you. And have you recovered from the podcasting montage that we did with James the other week, where we did, I don't know, the 27 mock trades, however many it was?
Yeah, I am still sleeping off the fake trade marathon we had the other day, but doing well. Excited to get back into some draft specific stuff today.
Yeah, same here. Same here. These are two really fun guys to talk about. Darian, how about you? How are you doing, man? Welcome back.
I'm excited. Yeah. Welcome back to everybody, and I guess welcome back me. I wasn't here last week, but yeah, I'm excited. These are, like you said, two fun guys. These are guys who I think, however you feel about either of them, they're on the Hornets radar. So
yeah,
it's definitely exciting.
Yeah. These are two guys that I would imagine have to be high on the boards and just constantly in conversations, and two guys that I think both have cases. At the number 4 pick, should they be there for the Charlotte Hornets. Before we jump into the scouts on Kon and VJ, though, a couple quick draft notes just to mention real quickly with regard to some early-ish entrants who have pulled their name out of the draft in the last couple of days. These are guys, some of whom were at the Combine a couple weeks ago in Chicago, but PJ Haggerty, who had kind of like not a great showing at the Combine, he is pulled his name out of the draft. He'll be going to Kansas State. Yaxel Lendeborg pulled out of the draft as well. He will be headed to Michigan, which should be a very good team in Ann Arbor next season. Really good front court to pair with Trey McKinney, who's one of the best incoming freshman wing shooters. A guy Lendeborg is a guy that had, I think, plenty of people would have slapped a first round grade on him. Alex Condon will be heading back to Gainesville to try to defend the national championship with the University of Florida. Another guy that you could have seen late first round, early second round, somewhere in that range. Carter Knox heading back to Arkansas for his sophomore year. Interesting wing with some good size and strength, who can do some stuff, attack closeouts, play defense. Milos Uzane will be back at the University of Houston. Big move for them, getting their primary ball handler back. And still, as of this recording, some guys that we're still waiting, I guess, to make sort of like final decisions with the deadline a few weeks away. You have Jameer Watkins, who was at Florida State the last couple of seasons. Great showing at the Combine. I believe he will turn 24 this summer, is still considering coming back to college basketball. I think there are some UNC fans that would maybe like to see him in Chapel Hill. Adu Terrio out of Arkansas seemingly hasn't made a final call yet. My guess is he'll stay in the draft along with Dahad Pettiford, who we've talked about a few weeks ago, back in March, I guess a couple of months ago, back in March when we did the Sweet 16 prospects pod. And then Miles Byrd out of San Diego State, who I'm a fan of. Matt, I know you've been talking about him a little bit recently as well. I have one of the Colorado State, San Diego State games in my queue up for either later tonight or later this week. So real quickly, Matt, Darian, any thoughts on this list of guys, or maybe if maybe there's one or two other names you're still sort of like waiting to hear a decision on, but surprises, confirmations, anything like that?
Yeah, this just matters because the Hornets have those 2 early second round picks.
Exactly.
So every guy that decided to go back to college kind of shrinks the pool of talent that Charlotte will have to choose from at the beginning of the second round. So nothing specific about those names. I mean, like you said, Miles Byrd is somebody that I have really fallen for over the past few weeks. If this was The Bachelor, I would give him a rose, I guess. It's not saying I'm falling for him. Really like his game. But yeah, still a couple of really interesting prospects in that range. Adu Tierra is somebody I started watching yesterday, and I really like him as well. So yeah, we'll see whether Charlotte makes both those picks in the early second round or they pair them to trade up for somebody late in the first. All those guys that decide to come back or decide to stay matters for Charlotte in that range.
Yeah, I believe all four of us, the three of us on this recording, plus James, had Therio in our sort of like our second round rankings for prospects for the Hornets that are up on our BuzzBeat plus like Excel file that we, I think, updated as recently as a couple of days ago. So certainly a guy that will be in the range, and yeah, could be a potential sort of like wing option along with maybe Drake Powell, who's, you know, potentially in that range as well too. So Jerry, any other thoughts, or should we go ahead and flip this over to the VJ Edgecombe portion of the pod?
Darian, I think your mic is muted.
Yeah, I'm not here.
Thank you.
It's
always something.
Was waiting to hear something, but never came.
It's always something. But my biggest thing is Jaxel, just because of the fact that I really felt as though he would have kind of been perfect what the Hornets are looking for. We know we're going to miss Grant Williams for half a year, essentially going into next year. But I mean, once he said that that he was willing to go back to college if he wasn't promised that first round, I figured it was going to be rough for the Hornets because we have those two picks, and I didn't feel as though maybe he was worth getting rid of both picks to maybe move up for him, especially considering what a team may ask, just because they know that's what we're looking for. So outside of that, I mean, like you mentioned, it does dwindle the pool a little bit, so maybe we have some good chances of the Hornets walking out with a couple good players.
Yep. And just a quick point of clarification, the NCAA deadline for early entrants to make a decision is tomorrow night, Wednesday, May 28th at 11:59. The deadline for international players, I believe, is June 15th at 5 p.m. So there's always a bit of a delta between those two. But okay, it's time to get started talking about VJ here. Former 5-star recruit, one of the top prospects in the 2024 recruiting class, has some international experience playing with the national team from the Bahamas. Guard, measured at the combine. I think he had what I would wager would to be a like neutral to positive combine measurement. I think the fact that he checked in at 6'4", above 6'3", was notable. 6'7.5" wingspan, not bad. I think maybe, who knows, you would have had your fingers crossed for a little bit more length in terms of the wingspan. 193 pounds. He's 19 years old. He'll turn 20 in July. He's a little older than Kon Knueppel, who will turn 20 in August. Sort of like an older age for a high-end lottery prospect. Athletically pretty special. One of the best athletes in this draft class, regardless of position. He maybe has a case to be the best athlete in the draft. Explosive, powerful, compact, 33 dunks this season, 1.4 dunks per 40 minutes, which is a big number for a guard, and very explosive jumping off of 2 feet. Really excels in the open floor. When he has a seam, or if the transition defense isn't set, his ability to sort of like tap the turbo button or hit the gas and just get downhill, the ability to sort of outrun defenders in the open floor. There's kind of a, like a punt returner, returning a kickback and just sort of like outrunning guys who seemingly have angles on him. A very fast end-to-end speed. And again, I think he can get to that top gear pretty quickly. Doesn't need much momentum or runway to sort of like ratchet up the speed. According to CBB Analytics, 17.5% of Edgecombe's total field goal attempts were in transition, and then 75th percentile for guards. And he shot 71% on 2-point attempts in transition. Again, that's per CBB Analytics. Synergy might have different numbers. Now, when we turn the page to the functional athleticism, and this is where I think I think I'll be kind of like most curious to see where you guys weigh in on this. I think there are parts of his athleticism that are quite functional. And those parts for me really are his leaping ability, the above the rim acrobatics, his hang time, the mid-air body control. He's able to flash it on drives, grabbing contested rebounds in traffic. However, he does seem to struggle some in his lower body with flexibility, with bend, especially for a smaller guard or a smallish, maybe not small, but just like not a jumbo sized guard. And I do think you see this create some issues for him in the half court with his on ball creation, with his finishes, trying to get downhill and finish at the rim. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you first. Thoughts broadly on Edgecombe, his athleticism, and its functionality translating to the next level?
Yeah, I think everything you said I agree with. His vertical athleticism, his explosiveness. I can't remember like watching a college player just move the way that he does, especially like on chase down blocks. I mean, he had some of the most like audacious chase down blocks I've seen in a long time. Like some of the dunks that he was able to throw down. I mean, it's just unbelievable watching him play basketball because he just kind of flies in out of nowhere, like a superhero. Honestly, like some of the stuff that he does, especially at that age, the feel that he has for like timing, chase down blocks, going up for lobs. It's all. I mean, I don't want to say one of one stuff, but I mean, it's like top 5th percentile of athletes, probably in the NBA once he gets drafted. But I do agree with the functionality of it. It kind of feels like he is just like moving too fast for his own good at times. It's like he's like moving so fast and his brain like can't comprehend what he's doing, which leads to some live ball turnovers when, he's dribbling or on defense. He's obviously an incredible quick twitch athlete, but I've seen him struggle to like get around screens when he has to like slow down and kind of like, bend like an edge rusher, you're rushing the passer. So there are some like functional things where the athleticism looks really good. Like aesthetically, he's going to have some like really great like TikTok highlights, and he's going to be on House of Highlights every week for the stuff that he does in the air. But there are like little nitpicky things when he's closing out. Does he have the like ability to slow down and control to close out, or is he kind of getting out there recklessly because he has the ability to like get up and block shots with his crazy athleticism? So functionally, there are some things that I worry about, but it does feel kind of nitpicky. I do wonder how much those kind of things will get fixed in he's going to be playing basketball full time, getting the best training in the world from an NBA program.
Yeah. I mean, some of that stuff could have already in the, 2+ months since we've last seen him play a game for Baylor. Perhaps he's even made strides already. Darian, any thoughts bouncing off what Matt just said here?
I mean, Matt said everything. I'm looking at my notes and I'm like almost checking them off. He said everything I was going to say, which for me is good. That means I'm seeing some of the right things, but for sure, like I think his athleticism, I think it's a sight to behold. I think he's probably one of the most athletic players in this draft class. I think he plays a little bigger than what he is because I honestly thought he was going to measure in around like 6'2", 6'3". So I guess him being 6'4" is him being that size.
I was going to bet 6'3", honestly.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be pretty small, but I mean, he plays like maybe a 6'6", 6'5" type. But he moves like he is 6'2", 6'3". So I don't know. I think that I agree that he plays too fast. That's like one of my biggest things about him offensively. Defensively, he just doesn't really know how to control it. I really see it. I see it a lot on defense, like specifically as Matt said with the closeouts. He kind of just runs to the shooter, and then I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like he's always at a bad angle, so they're just able to go around him. He's not really able to keep them in front of him. So that's something that, once again, as Matt mentioned, nitpicky, but it's something that you see and say, I think this could be fixed at the next level. It's just a matter of, being a little more fluid when you are doing your closeouts. And then also, as you mentioned, that leads to him losing the ball a lot. I think that we see so many of the highlight plays of him transition, but I feel as though there's a good chunk of those same exact plays, same scenario, but he goes up and someone's able to tip the ball out of his hand, or he goes up and loses the ball. So he's a little loose and doesn't know how to kind of put it all together. But I think we're like as mentioned, we're nitpicking, but that's what you have to do kind of at this phase. I want to say that with the highlight plays, I think a lot of people are missing, kind of the grit of it all with the film. So that's why we see, people just kind of throw, he's a good defender. It's more like they're projecting him to be a good defender, but it's not exactly quite there yet. But he has absolutely everything to become what we're all hoping he would, but it's just not there the way a lot of people kind of say it is.
I want to get into the defense and the on balls creation stuff more in a minute here. But Darian, I'm going to throw it right back to you real quickly here. And let's sort of, as we're focusing more on his offense to start here, I'd like to get into his jump shot specifically. So VJ, after a rough start, ended up shooting, I think, a pretty decent ball this season at Baylor, just under 34% on pretty high volume, 78% from the line, 39% from deep in Big 12 play. So it got better as the year went along. But just your thoughts on Edgecombe, his confidence as a shooter, his versatility as a shooter, and maybe anything that he might need refinement on.
I mean, that's good that you bring that up, because one thing I've seen a lot about VJ Edgecombe is that he shot 40% in high school. Now that I don't know for sure, but that's just what I've seen a lot. Like, he was a decent shooter in high school. I'm not one of those people that really fall into the high school numbers, especially when you're telling me that it was 40%, which we know as you continue to go, college, pros, that number is going to drop. So I'm not really sure if I can buy that his shot will come around, considering, what it was 40% in high school. And as you mentioned, in Big 12 play, it did go up to 39% compared to what it was for the whole season, which was 34. But like, one thing I looked at is, like, for example, his like corner shooting. It looks like it's good because you see on one side, like on the right corner, he shoots like 53%, but he only has taken 15 shots out of the whole season. And on the left corner, he shoots 32%, but he's only taken 25 all season. So that is where a majority, like that right corners, were like pushing up what his shooting splits are. So I feel as though, like, it's a little misleading. As far as his confidence, I think that he's not afraid to take it. I think he's a pretty good off-ball mover. He comes to the ball handler. He's able to get open, and he's very confident in taking those shots. I don't think there is much diversity in those shots. Like, I think you pretty much know what he's going to do offensively, and I think that's going to hurt him in the long run. He's going to go to the rim or shoot a three off ball. Like, you kind of have an idea of how he plays. So I think that there's some things he could work on with that, especially like going into the mid-range, because it's there. When he drives, I think he just tries to be creative, because he's extremely creative at the rim. So I think he tries to like do some crazy layup package instead of maybe just slowing down a little bit and stopping and popping. But overall, I'm not that confident on the shot, just because there's too much manipulating of the numbers and the shots to get a good percentage. I think it can be there. I think it can be serviceable, but I'm just not on the train of some people where they say, oh, no, it'll, like, as though they feel as though they know it will come around. I'm not sure. Wouldn't be surprised if he could shoot like 36, 37%, but I'm not just going to assume that he's going to be able to make that jump.
Yeah, to follow up on that, he's truly just a catch and shoot 3-point shooter right now. Our friend James is probably sitting on a gondola somewhere in the midst of Spain right now on vacation. His hand track stats had him at 43% on open catch and shoot threes, which is a good percentage. And if we're thinking about him on the Hornets specifically, he's not going to have to handle the ball right away. He's not going to have to create offense. If he can come in and shoot 40% on the open catch and shoot looks that Charlotte's primary ball handlers create for him, then that's great. And I think he'll fit really nicely into what Charles Lee wants to do on offense. But outside of that, VJ, at least not right away, he's not going to be pulling up threes off the dribble. He's not. We talked about Trey Johnson. I think that was last week. His shooting profile is one of the cleanest that I think you guys said you've ever seen in a scout. But Edgecombe doesn't have that. He really is kind of a one-trick pony from behind the line right now. And the biggest leap that he can make in his game on offense really is getting some sort of on-ball creation. Can he start hitting threes off the dribble? Can he, start running off of things like pin downs or running off the flare screens that Charles Lee likes to get his guys into and shoot threes off of that? he's pretty much like a set shooter, shoot three kind of guy right now. And like I said, the biggest leap he'll need to make at the next level is figuring out some ways to like add some more spice into his jump shooting profile that he doesn't currently have.
Yeah, I think he's got enough confidence as a shooter with some versatility. Got the shot got better as the year went along. I think the sort of like upper body mechanics are pretty good. I think there's some refinement needed with his footwork, and I think that is sort of like what limits him as a movement guy. At least it's like part of what limits him, coming off screens. Like he needs almost an extra step to sort of like come off the screen, catch, square, then let it fly. Whereas, we're going to talk about Kon Knueppel in a second. There's just no wasted motion for him coming off down screens. I feel pretty good about Edgecombe shooting off flares just because like that motion it's a little bit more like relocation-esque than it is sort of like hard movement. And that's sort of like, that's pretty like situational and context dependent, but like I do think that's something he could step into. Whereas again, coming off hard movement, having to curl on your read a defender, curl on your inside foot, let it fly. I don't think he's ready for that stuff right now. But Baylor did put him in floppy action and some other stuff like that. He got some reps doing that this year. I looked this up. According to CBB Analytics, Edgecombe took 43 3-point attempts of 25 or more feet from 25 feet or deeper this season. He was 14 of 43 on those looks, 32.3%. Not terrible, not great, on pretty low volume. I do think he's going to like make shots like as a catch and shoot guy. And that's going to open up the closeout game and some of the other stuff he can do. So I think, again, obviously for like the high end outcomes you're expecting, he's going to need to develop way more like sort of like on ball equity. But if you're looking more in the 75th percentile range, like that kind of stuff, I still feel pretty confident he's going to be able to shoot, play defense, and then give you some juice with the ball, especially in transition. I'm going to flip it over here to the sort of like some of the on-ball decision-making and creation efforts, because we've talked about some of this stuff without really kind of like digging in a little bit further. It got better during the season, I think. I think his handle got better, but the craft, the confidence, he still has a long way to go. And, we also talked about sort of the functional athleticism limitations with his bend. There's not like a lot of wiggle with him as a driver, doesn't get super low into his moves. Matt, I think you sort of described this as him, coming off coming off like as an edge rusher or something like that. The footwork and coordination needs work. That said, he has a good first step. And when he can get like a straight line shot to the rim, he can win races in that regard. That's when he's like, rejecting screens and he's able then to get into a gap or get into a seam. And he just needs ways to quickly create seams to get to the rim so he can get downhill. The more time, the more dribbles that are required to sort of like set things up and create those advantages. I think that's when the more issues arise, and that's when he can struggle because the process isn't super good, nor is the handle. That said, I think he's like an okay pick and roll passer in certain situations. He's capable of making live ball reads. Some of that stuff is maybe a little bit pre-scripted, like it's sort of like a one read type play. So I'll just put it like this. I think there are more than enough concerns with his handle and on-ball feel to question if he can actually be, a creator at the next level, or if he'll need to work if he'll just need to work as a closeout attacker, spot up shooter, and transition gunner who might be able to give you some movement, screen usage. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned about these things, but I'd be curious to know, and I'll flip it back to Matt. Where are you with Edgecombe sort of like as an on-ball guy at the moment?
Yeah, I feel similarly. Seeing him move in transition gives me hope for him, on like straight line drives, attacking closeouts on offense. And that's kind of where everything revolves around his 3-point shot. If he is somebody that you have to account for as a catch and shoot guy that is going to get closed out on hard, then he's going to have, these lanes to the rim where his vertical athleticism, his finishing ability will shine. But yeah, there's not much in terms of, creating space for himself off the dribble. I noted a lot of times where he kind of got to the free throw line and got walled up and would just pick up his dribble and either like kick it out or kind of force a pass. There wasn't really the, like Trey Johnson, really nice feel in the mid range where he kind of gets into his like little bag of footwork and is able to shoot the, Devin Booker, Kobe fadeaways. There's not really any sort of in between game for Edgecombe right now. It's either he's going to knock down a three or he's going to straight line drive to the rim and try to finish up and over somebody. I do think the handle is a concern. Darian, you kind of said it earlier. He has these highlights on defense where he's like ripping the ball away from people and getting out in transition. And that's what you're seeing on like the Twitter clips. But I noted a couple of times where VJ stole the ball in transition and then he was going the other way and got it stolen right back. So, there's some worry for me about what is his role going to be on offense, at least right away. I think he could come to Charlotte and, we're talking about the Hornets specifically, be like a supercharged Josh Green kind of on offense where he's, playing out of the corner. He's asked to handle like a little bit, kind of make simple reads. Maybe like, like I said, a supercharged Josh Green. But yeah, he's not going to be the kind of guy that you're throwing the ball to right away and asking him to create offense. And to be honest, I don't know how he ever gets to that point without some real growth with his handle, with his space creation abilities, with his kind of in-between game. Because right now he's a 2-level scorer. He has no mid-range craft. And in the analytics world, those are the kind of guys that you feel like, you want to build around. He's an analytics darling, rims and threes, but the greats, the all-time greats, they have the in-between craft as well, and he doesn't quite have that yet.
And I would say I would look at how, him being the analytics darling, I would look at the way he's able to do the whole rim and threes thing, because as you mentioned, it's get the ball, and if he's not shooting, he's going straight to the rim. There's very rarely like additional like passing or anything else. He's looking straight at the rim. So you wonder like just how effective can that be when he's going to do one of two things. I think another thing is his mid-range with that. I want to say I feel as though we could get there, but also part of me is like, what you would really be banking on for VJ Edgecombe is that the defense just ends up being like really high level and then the offense just improves. I don't know if the best version of VJ, because as you mentioned, how does he ever get to this point where he's like someone you can really trust handling the ball? I don't know if he ever gets there. So I part of me thinks that what you're really looking for VJ is that you hope that he becomes this very stout defender, but can get you, a solid number on offense. I don't think you would hope to look for him to be this guy that can do it all. But if he does want to reach that next level, then that's where, he would need to get that mid-range game and be able to create a little more. Also, I think that he's, as we were talking about coming up with Kon Knueppel, I think he's somebody where you draft him now and then maybe he can help you, maybe lift the floor of your team now, and then you worry about, what he does in the future, and he can kind of do both. You can kind of have him to be this guy to make plays now, but then also you can slowly develop him into a player for the future, as there's other players that we'll, of course, talk about that they're more so now and they're more so later. I think he's a good middle, and I can see that maybe that's another reason why, outside of us desperately needing someone to be a better Josh Green, I think that's another reason he's mocked to us a lot, is because a lot of people say they don't know where the Hornets are going to go, and I think he's the perfect player for that, because he's good enough now, but you see this other level to him. It's just a matter of will he ever put it together.
Yeah, I think with VJ, there's like two, if you install him hypothetically in a place like Charlotte, there's like two development curves that you're going to be trying to juggle simultaneously, which is like how can he help this team next season, playing next to LaMelo and Brandon, defense, energy, cutting, lobs, transition, spot up shooting, be a ball mover. But then you're also, there's potentially a slower development curve for the sort of like the on ball stuff, the grasps at something more than being sort of like a 3-and-D guy that can at the guard spot that also gives you, really impactful, transition finishing, which is still a nice player to have. But just like if there is something if there's an upside bet with him, it's just going to take it's probably going to take longer to get here. I won't read through. There's some interesting numbers with Edgecombe playing this season with Rob Wright, who is a freshman point guard for Baylor, off the floor, that are pretty interesting, but long, like, too long didn't read. Like, Edgecombe got to the rim more, scored in the paint efficiently, and like his assist numbers jumped up a lot in the minutes without Rob Wright this season, sort of like being Baylor's like de facto, primary offensive player. So I don't know. There are some like numbers. There are some like periphery numbers to maybe get like a little bit more excited or to buy into that. But I want to flip it over to his defense. We've touched on it a little bit. 3.8% steal rate, 2.3% block rate. He blocked 3 3-point attempts this season, which is a good number for a player his size. I went back and looked at this through the Bart Torvik database going back to the 07-08 season. There have been only 8 high major freshmen or sophomores with 2% steal rate, 2% block rate, 30 dunks, and 100 3-point attempts. And some of those players were Cooper Flagg, VJ Edgecombe, Keegan Murray, Lonzo Ball, Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker. Those were sort of like the bigger draft names that hit those. So some interesting players to have in there. I think guys like Lonzo and Wiggins, while not like perfect comps for Edgecombe, I can see some parallels or some sort of like some roles he could fit into that are sort of like similar to what those guys have provided for different teams over the years. Very quick vertical burst, which opens up all of that, the weak side rim protection that we sort of touched on a little bit. He had some success at Baylor as like a low man help defender in certain alignments, but I'm just not sure I see that translating to the NBA where he's going to be 6'4" guard with a sub 6'8" wingspan. I think his defensive engagement level can sort of like fluctuate at times, and he's very reliant on his athleticism over just sort of like possession by possession discipline. I think that can get better. Baylor was just a weird defense, I think, to contextualize from a team concept this season. They were very small after some guys went down for them. And this was a team that had to play a lot of like junk defenses, a lot of 1-3-1 zone, a lot of 1-5 switching by having a lot of guys in the 6'3" to 6'7" range with Norchad Amir at 5. So not like the perfect context, I think, to sort of like evaluate him from, but there's a lot of good stuff to like both on and off the ball. I sort of touched on some of the team defense stuff. Darian, your thoughts on Edgecombe defensively, maybe focus in on the on ball and point of attack defense.
I will say there's a lot of conversation about how good is he as a point of attack defender. I think some people are either he's not good at all or he's great. I don't feel like there's too many people that really analyze as for what we see. And a lot of times I see like he's not the defender you think he is, but I mean, I think he's pretty good on ball. I do agree with you where you said that at times it does seem like he kind of just takes himself out to play. And I feel as though some of that comes from gambling. Like he'll ruin a whole good defensive possession by gambling out on a steal or a block or a contest when I've seen plays where he goes up, tries to get the block, he misses the block, but kind of stays there. So his guy is like open on the other side of the court and he never rotates to anybody. He just kind of stays where he's at. So I think that you want to obviously get those fixed. But I think he's not as bad as on-ball defender as people say. I will say that, obviously with the NBA guards, they're quicker, they're more, so they're stronger. They're way more creative on ball. So I think that I could see him having issues with that. But I don't think he's just going to be this defensive. I don't want to say bust, but there's some people that's just like he's not as good as you think he would be. And so I agree with that to an extent, but I don't think it's something that can't be fixed. I think it's just all mental. It feels as though physically he has what he needs to do it. It's just a matter if he takes himself out of those defensive possessions. So yeah, that's kind of really my biggest thing with him right now from all the film I've watched.
Yeah, so Regulator in the chat asked what VJ's elite skill is, and I think it's event creation on defense. He's going to jump passing lanes. Brian, you said it. He's going to protect the rim from the weak side and come up with some highlight blocks. there are defenses. The Thunder do this really well. They thrive on like the chaos on defense. They're jumping passing lanes. They're top blocking. They're all up in the the shorts of the guys they're guarding, and they kind of thrive in the chaos. They thrive in like the turnover creation. And there's been a lot of chatter about like the turnover economy in the playoffs and how much it matters to have guys that create turnovers and create chaos. And I think that's VJ's best skill. He's going to just. I hate saying he's going to like make things happen and sound like Bill Simmons, but that's just what he's going to do. He's going to, like create deflections. He's going to block shots, but it's also going to lead to like him getting back cut because he's going too hard at something, or he's going to bite on a pump fake and get into foul trouble. So I think his elite skill could also be considered his biggest weakness as an off-ball defender, because he is just so aggressive and so reliant on his athleticism. Kind of gets him into trouble on defense occasionally.
Good points all around. And we'll just really add on real quickly, along with that aggression, a very physical defender too. And while I think that is generally a positive, I think it can also occasionally work. It can work against him at times as well too. So that will wrap up our scout on VJ Edgecombe. Before we swing it over to Kon Knueppel, Matt or Darian, any last thoughts on VJ? We good to go?
Just one thing we didn't touch on. He's good at generating free throw attempts on offense. I think that's important to say about his offensive game, because while he doesn't have the like mid-range craft, he's fearless getting to the rim. And although he doesn't like finish all the time, and it's not always going to be like this crazy highlight, his fearlessness is great because he is going to rack up free throw attempts if he continues to do that at the next level. But with that, and this is a whole separate conversation that we could spend a lot of time talking about, I do worry a little bit about VJ's like long-term viability in the NBA when his athleticism starts to decline, because he is so reliant on it. I do wonder, what is his shelf life as an NBA player when he loses 5-10% of his athleticism? And is that worth how long of a bet is he, right? Like, is that something that Charlotte takes into account if they decide to draft him? Like, hey, are you getting 4 years of elite production, a la like Derrick Rose, or John Moran is still a crazy good athlete? But just something to think about as well. Guys with his athletic profile don't age well. So
yeah, it's a good point. And it's always like a little sad when you see some of those guys lose a step. It's not the same thing, but like I remember back in the day on this pod with Richie and Spencer, we would talk about, I mean, obviously we adored Kemba, but it was always a little, especially because he had so many knee issues back in the day. It was like, if this guy lost like 5% of his twitch, it's toast. He's like a 5'10" guy that's totally reliant on being able to like, create separation at the drop of a dime. So it's tough. And then, I don't, especially with a guy like Kemba who doesn't have the size or the defense to really sort of like fall back on, it can certainly get tough. So, all right. Good discussion on VJ. Let's flip it over to one of my favorite prospects in the country this season, a guy I got to cover up close, and really it was a pleasure to see this guy work at Cameron Indoor Stadium this season. That would be Kon Knueppel, guard, wing from Duke, one and done freshman out of Wisconsin. Duke listed him at 6'7", 217 this year. At the combine, he measured at 6'5", 219. 6'6" and a quarter wingspan, not negative. And we've talked about him and comped him to Desmond Bane a few times on this pod. So didn't have the negative Desmond Bane wingspan. So way to go, Kon. He's 19, as I said earlier in the pod, and he will turn 20 this August. Just right off the bat. One of the best shooters in the draft. I think we've talked about him a fair amount. We've also talked about Trey Johnson. Those are the two guys in terms of like lottery prospects that have the kind of like high-end movement shooting skills in touch from different levels of the floor that really, really jumps out. I think Kon's ability to catch, gather, energy transfer, and get into his shot motion is really, really special. Like he has a lightning quick release. When he's coming off movement, I think he has some of the best footwork in this class. And I think it does start also with his ability to read defenders. I do think this is something that's becoming I think it's becoming more common in recent years, but just like, I don't think it's still pretty rare that you see freshman guys like Kon who are as good as he is at reading off ball coverages and setting his defender up. And just, he knows when to fade the screen. He knows when to come off flat. He knows when to curl. He knows when to catch and try to immediately get a shot up or rifle into a rescreen ball screen with Kamon Malawach or Malik Brown, but just really, really good at setting all of that stuff up. So again, it's hard to knock his shot. Incredible free throw shooter, one of the best in the country on high volume. And the degree of difficulty on some of his 3-point makes this season, obviously a lot of that's coming off the catch, but a lot of these aren't like standstill, threes. He had plenty of those with Cooper kicking out to him, but I think there's enough degree of difficulty for you to feel quite good about sort of like the high end outcomes with him as a movement shooter. Matt, let's focus in on the jump shot with Kon to start off here. How do you feel about Kon? Is he your top shooter in this draft class? And or was there something maybe you would have even liked to have seen more of with him as a shooter this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's him and Trey Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
You can quibble back and forth on their strengths. Trey is more of the off the dribble shooter, space creating for himself. Where like you said, Kon is just if you look up the word jump shot in Wikipedia, I mean, you could show a picture, you could show a video of Kon's like form. You said his energy transfer, his like top half, bottom half, all like perfectly in sync coming off of the catch, whatever he does catching the ball and shooting, no matter if it's like off a pin down, off a flare, off a, just like a back screen, whatever, it looks perfect every time. So yeah, incredible jump shooter on high volume. I asked me if he's a top shooter in the class. I just go back and forth between the strengths between him and Trey Johnson. But yeah, I mean, jump shot is great. It's going to be like a high level skill immediately when he walks into the NBA. And I think I said this about him a few weeks ago. He's kind of has like the jack of all trades, master of none feel, where he can kind of do everything at least a baseline level, but he has mastered the jump shot. And I think that matters. He's going to come in with like a really high floor, but the jump shot gives him a high ceiling as well because he is such a good shooter from off of a number of different actions. But what I love about him the most is just kind of like the malleability in his role at Duke. He wasn't just like strictly a jump shooter. There was some secondary creation that he flashed, like the mind meld he developed with Malawach, where he was able to, hit him off pick and rolls on the like second side of the action. He's able to function in the mid range with good footwork. He's like a pretty strong driver. He has like the strong base, like a wide upper half where he's able to kind of get into some more things than just being strictly a jump shooter like Trey is. So I feel like if you were to ask me the overall offensive package, I prefer it for Kon, but I would say I like Trey's jump shooting a little bit better because there's a little bit more to his game on that end. But yeah, you said at the top, Kon is one of your favorite prospects to evaluate, to cover. I didn't get a chance to cover him, obviously, but have loved watching his film at Duke.
Yeah, Darian, thoughts on Kon as a shooter?
He's definitely a shooter. Like, he can, no matter how you give it to him, he's going to put the ball up and he's going to make it. I like how one thing I really like about him when you were talking earlier about like the way he's able to read off-ball defenses is I like that when he is open but he doesn't have the ball, he stays there. Because I think a lot of times players keep trying to relocate because they didn't get the ball. He knows that he's open. He knows the coverage, and he just stays where he's at. I think that's a underrated skill as we see a lot of players just start to move and kind of mess up the flow of the offense. I think that I like that he's also able to do other things with the ball, as Matt said. I mean, he is. I do feel as though he is that jack of all trades player, master of none. But I believe that what separates him from other shooters is that he's so good at these other things. Yes, he may not be amazing at them, but he can do a lot more than just catch and shoot. He can put the ball on the floor. I feel as though there's like a little bit of the way he goes to the rim, and I didn't notice this until he said this is one of the players he studies, but there's a little bit of Jimmy Butler in his game where he goes to the rim, where he's just very patient. He's slowly taking all the contact. You wonder, how would that look maybe if you think about someone like Jimmy not necessarily being a shooter. Should a shooter take that much contact? But Kon is stocky, and I don't think that really phases him that much. But I do like his patience, and it's just gotten better and better throughout the season. I like the way that the different roles he's played for Duke, some because of injury, some not. But I think that when you watch enough of him, you're able to see kind of how he reacts to playing with different players. He played with, his relationship on the floor with Kon Malawach was completely different from his relationship with Cooper, but he played off both of them probably exceptionally well, at the same level. So I think you can place him on any team. This is the type of guy teams love. So I think as a shooter, as Matt mentioned, I think that you definitely might have to go with Trey just because of the fact that how he does it. But when you talk about night in, night out, what can I rely on? I think that's Kon all the way. And that's something that immediately is going to transcend teams. It doesn't really matter where he goes. A team will be more than happy to have a guy that can space the floor the way he does it.
Yeah, and I don't think he needs to be pigeonholed into just a pure, off ball or even sort of movement role. He has some juice with the basketball. He can initiate offense. He is very, very patient. He knows he's not going to win a foot race with anyone, but his physicality, his understanding of angles, his ability to decelerate and play through the bump, to play through contact. He's not like a breakdown player, but again, his strength and physicality to get north-south, and to be a pull-up shooter from different levels of the court, especially on some, tough, sort of inside the paint, but away from the restricted area, mid-range shots. Really, really good. He's got incredible, incredible touch. Shot a good number from basically every level on the floor this season. And you see him, he measures in at almost 220 pounds. I think he carries the weight pretty well, but just from a guy, I saw him up close a lot this season. He's very powerfully built. And I'm not surprised that he was insanely durable for Duke this season, that he was insanely good at using his strength to create separation. And he was also able to apply that strength some on the defensive side of the court too, which I'm looking forward to sort of talking through some of his defense here in a few minutes. I would also just like to add this in. I think my favorite micro skill of any player in the draft this season may have been Kon in his ability to attack drop coverage. And I think that's something that's going to be really interesting for him at the next level. You see so many NBA teams that play drop. It's the base defense for probably the majority of half-court defenses in the NBA, I would say pretty safely. And for a guy like Kon, he's so strong and so patient, and he's so confident as a shooter that if he comes off that screen and he has the guy, if the five is a couple feet off of him, yeah, he can look to let it fly. But he can also keep the defender on his back, on his hip, put the defender in jail, and then he'll just start slow rolling his way down to the paint, and every inch that the defensive five gives him, he's going to take it. And I thought he got pretty darn manipulative at times this season by forcing, and this is something that Duke teaches, but he's very good at forcing, at waiting to the last second against drop coverage to make a decision with what, if he wants to shoot or pass the ball. He's going to force the five to make a decision. And if the five sticks too close to Kon Malawach on the roll, Kon's shooting the runner, he's shooting the floater, or he's getting to the rim for a layup real quickly. If that defender comes a step, lunges in a half step in his direction, he's throwing the ball to the rafters and letting the five go get the lob for the finish. And he just was so good at that this season against a bunch of different drop looks. Really, really, really impressive stuff from Kon. I'm a little bit curious before we flip it to defense. If either of you guys and Darian, we'll throw it back to you here. How do you feel does Kon have the ability? Do you think he's a guy that can help drive offense on the next level? We know he can shoot. We know he's a good screener. Those inverted screen actions with Cooper and Kon were the bread and butter, the get out of jail card for Duke's offense this season. We know he can do all of these like really good sort of like auxiliary skills that amplify things. But is he a guy that you can run? Do you believe he can be a guy that you can run some offense through at the next level too?
I do. I mean, I saw him do it against Carolina when Cooper was out. It took him a little second to like kind of adjust, but once he got going, and he definitely was able to. Whether that was pick and roll, whether that was him coming off ball, like he just did a lot for that offense to kind of go. I think the thing with him is that maybe you would say that's maybe not most beneficial to his game because that would maybe increase like his usage as a volume. Just having the ball in his hand a lot more, shooting a lot more. You would kind of wonder, like, is he built for that kind of volume when running an offense? But definitely in spurts, like if you think of like if we're just relating it to the Hornets, having him come in when LaMelo's out, or LaMelo's been in for a while. This is towards the end of his minutes where we rotate him out. Have Kon run it like offense and have LaMelo play off ball because as we've mentioned on this podcast plenty of times, as much as people want the ball in LaMelo's hands, he's a fantastic off-ball player. So having someone like Kon to kind of help him use that part of his game, I think will be good. So yeah, it's just a matter, I think, of you consider like everyday volume with him. But as far as the ability to do it, as long as he has the players, because that's one thing about Duke, they no matter who they were missing, they had players. As long as he has the players around him, I think you should feel pretty comfortable with him running an offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think we get intoxicated by these primary initiators that are super athletic or really big or really graceful. And Kon he's not big, he's not super athletic, but he's got those. I mean, you said it, Brian. He's got the like contact balance. He's got the understanding of angles. He's got the IQ. He's got the like knowledge of the game. I don't want to give all like the white guy basketball player tropes to Kon, but he does have a lot of them, and he's great at them. It's not like it's a compliment to his game. So yeah, I do think he can drive offense as a primary creator, but not for like long stretches. I think, if we're talking again, Hornets specifically, Darian, you just said it really well. You pair him with LaMelo and those two guys play off of each other. LaMelo goes to the bench. It's Kon's turn to run the offense for a little bit. And then Trey Mann comes in and it's his turn to run the offense. He just gives you like another pitch on offense with what he's able to do. He's like a high level passer. He's a high level finisher, off 1 feet, off 2 feet, got incredible balance around the rim. He never feels sped up. He's never he doesn't get bumped off of his spot a lot. He kind of knows where he's going to go, where he wants to go, and he gets there. So yeah, can he drive offense? Absolutely. But I think it needs to be like in short spurts of time. I don't think he can be the primary creator for 40 minutes on the floor. I think if you're, mixing him in as like a changeup or a curveball, if LaMelo is your go-to fastball, whatever, I think Kon can absolutely do that. You
can also scheme it up some too. Actually, even in some of the ways I really like how the Hornets have used Brandon Miller, where it's like it's a screen-to-screen interaction where Brandon's going to set, he's setting a back screen or a slice screen for Miles Bridges, but then he's going to come off of a pin down from Mark Williams, right? And he can look to catch and shoot, or it's going to flow into, or, Mark might read it and dive to the rim off of a down screen, or you're going to get a quick step-up screen in a rescreen, and then Brandon can flow into the pick and roll. Like, I think if you do that kind of stuff to then sort of like launch Kon into these kinds of plays, it produces really good offense, or at least it certainly did this season at Duke. I've mentioned these numbers in a piece I went on with Adam Aronson to talk about Kon over at the Philly Voice, as he's been looking at prospects potentially for the Sixers at the number 3 pick. And these are just some numbers with Kon on the court this season without Cooper Flagg. We've talked a lot. We talked previously about what Kon did in Charlotte at the ACC tournament when Cooper played all but 15 minutes against Georgia Tech in the first half. But if you stretch it out for the full season, it's still not a huge sample. It's just 283 minutes. It's really not that much. But this is with Kon Knueppel on the court, Cooper Flagg off the court, 283 minutes. Duke's offensive rating, 130 points per 100 possessions. Kon Knueppel usage rate jumped up to 23%, and then a 23.7% assist rate. That's up from 20.9% usage rate and 13.6% assist rate, respectively, when sharing the floor with Cooper this season. So you can just see the immediate boost in usage, the immediate boost in more playmaking too, more on-ball stuff. Some of that comes with getting to the line more. Knueppel had a 44% free throw attempt rate with flag out of the game this season, compared to just under 31% with Cooper on the court. In those minutes as well, Kon still with a sub 9% turnover rate in the minutes without flag on the court this season, in an assist to turnover rate better than 3-1 in the minutes, where in a true shooting percentage of 62.5% too. There are other numbers we could get into. I'll sort of table it there. The point is, when Duke had to scale him up and give him a larger role with more on-ball equity against good teams in some cases, he excelled, and the team continues to just keep humming on that side of the court. And I believe when I then reduced the sample for matchups with Kon on the court, Cooper off, but against quad one opponents, it was like 140 minutes this season, and Duke still scored above 120 points per 100 possessions, and Kon's numbers were still rather impressive. So it wasn't like he was just feasting against, so-so comp in a lot of these games. So, all right, I'm gonna catch the ball and throw it right back to Matt here. We've talked a decent amount about Kon's offense. Where are you with Kon defensively? Because I think there's some stuff to like. I understand some of the concerns with him in space laterally, but where are you with Kon? Do you feel comfortable with him as the guy that you can sort of like you can trust to be a cog in a defensive system for you on the next level?
Yep, that sentence that you just said is exactly how I describe it. I feel like he is just going to be a perfectly fine member of a good team defense. He's a good communicator. If you watch Duke games, he's calling out a lot of stuff on defense, making sure that he's in the right place, like his teammates are in the right place. He's got good footwork on defense, and his strong frame allows him to hold his ground against more physical wings. I think in one-on-one coverage, he's going to struggle against the elite space creators of the world. But, how many guys can, cover speaking of draft prospects, Tahad Pettiford one-on-one for long periods of time? It's a really, really limited number of guys that can do that. So yeah, I think his IQ is good enough. His physical build is good enough, strength-wise. Opposite of VJ, he's not going to be the event creator that VJ is. He's not going to knock balls out of passing lanes. He's not going to get his hand in the cookie jar and come up with something. He's not going to block shots at the rim. But I think he knows that, and I think he plays within the mold that his physical gifts give him, and he does it well. So I'm not out on his defense at all. I don't think he's going to be the kind of guy that gets exposed come playoff time, because he's got enough to him defensively to hang at the next level. But yeah, I grade his defense out as neutral. He's not this, negative defender that folks are painting him to be.
Yeah, Darian, before I flip it over to you, Kon's strength alone means there's certain ways you can't pick on him. Like you can't, I don't think you can just put a target on his back automatically and just, get a switch or isolate with him and then back him down, because he's got enough size and strength that a lot of guys aren't going to be able to just simply overpower him, from the 3-point line down to the paint. You have to beat him. You're trying to go around him, so I think that also sort of like boosts his equity as a guy who should be able to be on the court for playoff basketball. But yeah, Darian, your thoughts on Kon's defense?
Real quick, I think he just needs. I think he just needs to guard up. Like he'll guard three. You think for shooting guard, you want them to guard 1 through 3. I think he's going to have to guard 2 through 4s at the next level. He's going to give up some length to power forwards, but he's going to be strong enough to bang with them. I think like Julius Randle. I would rather have Kon Knueppel guarding Julius Randle than like Rob Dillingham, another Wolf.
Yes,
is who my mind went to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Darian. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And I mean, y'all have said everything I was thinking. Like his strength is what allows him to be able to defend at the next level. And for guys that right now he's just being labeled as this 3-point specialist. I mean, he has probably some of the best defense I've seen from a 3-point specialist. As Matt said, he doesn't try to do too much. If you're watching VJ Edgecombe highlights, then you jump to Kon and Knueppel defensive highlights, you might be like, this is boring. But I guarantee you this, not too many people are getting past them. So he's not getting the blocks, he's not getting the steals, he's not doing all that. But if you watch, it's not like he's allowing that many points either. And there's been times on his film where he is guarding up and someone does like a drop step and you're like, oh, they're going to get that on him just for the nature of it. And then you see he has them stop short because of his strength and kind of able to put his body on them to react. So, yeah, I think that guarding up will be good for him, which once again is not typical for guys that are being labeled as this 3-point specialist. But I would honestly say he's not easy to label because label him as a 3-point specialist. Yes, that's his skill. That's his elite skill. That probably is what's going to keep him in the league. But you look at his defense, and as we talked about the playmaking and all these other things, you can't really label him just as a 3-point specialist. But yeah, by far, if you look at his defense, it's one of the best I've seen from guys who are labeled as this. He's going to come in and shoot. But no, his defense is it's much better than that. So I think that teams are going to be surprised. And if you're a team that needs just some reliable guys, which the Hornets do, this is a guy you look at. And that's kind of like, before we move on, that's kind of one of the things with the Hornets is they're in this weird spot. Do we go for the guy that does all these things well, or we hope to do all these things well, or go for the guy that we know could contribute? Because with Kon's game, there's a cap on it for sure, but it's also really high. He's ready to compete now.
Rapid fire real quickly, because we're running up against the clock here. Matt, I'm going to go to you first. Is Kon only a trade back guy, or is he an option for you at pick 4 for the Hornets?
Firmly in consideration at number 4.
Yeah. Darian, what about you?
I would say 4. If you want to win now, 4. He should be considered at 4.
To me, he absolutely is in consideration. He's not just a trade back guy. I think he is deserving of potentially of that number 4 pick. All right, we're gonna wrap things up there for today. That was our doubleheader on VJ Edgecombe and Kon Knueppel. We've been putting out a lot of draft and off-season content the last couple of weeks. Earlier this week, it went live, I think, on Monday, but Matt, James, and I did hypothetical trades for the Hornets, looking at Mark Williams and LaMelo Ball. There's going to be a part 2 for that coming up sometime soon. Richie had a conversation with T-Bone recently. We've done draft scouting pods of Trey Johnson, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg. We've talked about several other prospects as well. So please, some of that is behind the paywall at buzzbeat.substack.com. Some of that is certainly available on the public feed or wherever you get your podcasts. Please make sure to rate, review, to subscribe if you see fit. We're going to keep pumping these things out for the next few weeks leading into the draft, and we really appreciate you guys sticking with us and tuning in. So for Matt, Darian, Richie Randall, who's producing on the 1s and 2s. We will see you guys next time. Go Hornets.